Okay, here we go. Focus. Speed. I am speed. No, stay focused. Speed. I am faster than fast, quicker than quick. I am lightning.
Well guys, we made it. The 4th generation of Armored Core on the 7th gen consoles. And at that, the 1st generation to make it over to Xbox. Where all other generations of Armored Core felt like incremental upgrades, 4th gen definitely earns being called next generation. But before I go on, there's just 2 things. 1, I couldn't have done this without the help of the Armored Core 2.0 Discord community. Honestly, if it wasn't for their help, I would have never made these series overview videos. They helped me get the emulators for this gen and next gen up and running, and have answered all my questions related to Armored Core. I'll put a link down in the description, and if you do decide to stop by, make sure to check the pinned comments before asking any questions relating to emulation. I also want to say I'm going to be building off of information from the previous videos in the series, so if you haven't seen any of my other videos, make sure to at least check out the Armored Core 3 video and work your way up to this one. And of course, the intro. Now let me just say, not only was that intro amazing, but also it's a good representation of what to expect from the gameplay, which I couldn't state for some of the previous intros in the series, like Armored Core 2, where you couldn't even participate in a 3v3 battle even though it was in the intro, or Last Raven's intro where an AC fires a railgun blowing up everything in an area, including a helicopter. Only in reality, that weapon can't even destroy a helicopter in one shot. But Ferancer's intro delivers. That cool rocket strapped to his back? Yeah, that's a thing. And that huge walking fortress you see? Yeah, you gotta fight it. Moving on from the intro, there's one name stapled to the credits you might recognize. Yep, it's Miyazaki himself. He actually directed both Armored Core 4 and Ferancer, and we also see what I would think would be his favorite character in the games he's made, Patches. Well, his name is Patch the Good Luck, but I do think his actions are something right out of Patch's playbook.
Commence mission. Eradicate the enemy nexts, namely No Count and another unidentified four-legged craft. We don't know what tactics they'll use. Exercise caution. Unidentified four-legged next has been destroyed.
Wait! I give up! Hey, I'm just following orders here. If he's pulled out, why should I? You guys, you're still alive, right? This is No Count, come in! We're allies, right? Right?
Idiot Lynx. Go to hell and see if I care.
Bye, have a great time.
So a big question I've already gotten is, why am I not covering Armored Core 4? And there's a few reasons. It just doesn't have the same amount of content Ferancer has, and Ferancer's just simply the better game. There's more parts, better quality of missions, and even more missions at that. And Ferancer has a much more interesting story, not to mention how Armored Core 4 felt somewhat unfinished. First, the garage was confusing, not even being able to look up descriptions of stats, and that's been a feature that's been around since Armored Core 3. Also, it has one of the most lackluster arenas that's probably in competition with Nexus for worst arena in the game. And aside from that, I couldn't even figure out how to save my designs. Also, being forced to start a mission without even seeing the mission briefing was kind of a big fail, especially since Armored Core is all about preparing your mech accordingly for the mission at hand. And not being able to change parts around before you know what you're actually supposed to be doing would probably be considered a sin. I will bring up features exclusively to 4 and I'll be going over the story, so I don't think anyone will be missing out. So let's start with the general feel of the game. If I had to describe Ferancer, I would say it tries to make the player feel powerful, and it accomplishes that 100%. And I wouldn't say that's a bad thing. Yes, the game isn't as hard as most of the previous games in the series, but there are a few hard missions, including one of the hardest missions in all of Armored Core. I think the reason for this empowerment and lack of difficulty is due to just how fast the game is. The thing is, Armored Core 4 wasn't even this fast. It was still fast, but not this fast. And it feels like any NPCs you fight in Armored Core 4 were subject to the same laws of physics you were. But in this game, 75% of the ACs you fight just can't keep up with your speed. That is, if you make a half-decent mech. And it's totally possible I'm just saying this because I've clocked in thousands of hours into Ferancer here, so I genuinely don't even remember what it felt like to be a noob pilot in this game. Now what I've said sounds negative, but it's really not, mainly because of the types of missions the game throws at you. Yeah, maybe 1v1s in the arena might be unmemorable, but what about taking down this thing?
Powerful mines are scattered all over the combat zone. Stay alert now.
Or this thing? That's not to mention just how hard this game gets when factoring in multiplayer, but more on that later. And keep in mind, almost all the changes are subject to both 4 and Ferancer, so unless I state differently, just assume I'm talking about both games. So let's get into the huge list of new and changed features. The days of overheating are gone, and instead of overheating you get an energy shield, which the game refers to as primal armor. This isn't your standard Halo energy shield though, as you'll be taking chip damage, even when your armor is fully charged. and there's a lot of stats dedicated to primal armor, like weapon penetration and how much damage a weapon does to a PA bar. Also, instead of needing a radiator to cool your mech, your generator is responsible for KP output, which dictates how fast your shields recharge. KP output standing for Kojima particles, which is what powers your primal armor, and I'll talk more about Kojima particles in a bit. So every body part you equip to your AC has primal armor rectification, which adding up all your body parts is just how high your total primal armor gets, and also PA durability, which is how much your PA degrades upon being hit. I promise you this isn't a build tutorial, but I just wanted to explain how in-depth something like an energy shield can get in a game like Armored Core, and how it can't really just be described as a basic energy shield. There's also a lot of story behind these new Kojima particles, but I'll get more into that in the story segment of the video. Something that's new is when you start the game you can choose between different starting mechs. I really like this feature because you have options right at the start of the game, and also these parts aren't the generic sucky starter parts that you'd get right at the start of every other Armored Core game. These parts are just as good as any other parts, and even when the shop expands, you could easily find yourself holding on and using some of them throughout the game. One criticism I have is when you start the game there's multiple control schemes, but the default is really bad. Just make sure to switch that shit over to regular B. The controls might feel weird at the start, but most games don't have a mandatory fly button, so I really do feel like this is the best layout you can get. And yeah, I'm pretty upset they didn't just make regular B the default layout. I feel like any playtesting of the game would have resulted in regular B being the standard layout. Anyways, after picking your starter AC and controls, you get a tutorial. This is a new addition and it's been way overdue. Previous games it was just sink or swim until you figure it out. So yeah, this is a huge step towards making Armored Core more accessible to modern gaming standards. Sadly, I can't say the same thing when it comes to the lack of quick save functionality. There's a pretty big chance that anyone who's new to Armored Core would just give up after getting multiple hours in and losing their save. There really is no excuse for not having autosave. Even back on the PS2, later 3rd gen games would just have an option to restart the mission, so there was literally no point to not having an autosave, other than maybe to make the player want to quit. So the biggest issue with Armored Core has always been being too far behind on the times when it comes to just the most basic shit, like not having access to the right stick until 4 years into the PS2's lifespan, or this quick saving issue. I really do wonder just how much more word of mouth these games would get if these problems weren't a factor. So anyways, when you get past the tutorial, you're greeted with a different menu. It's quite a lot different from the hexagonal-ish scrolling menu from the previous games. Maybe it's just my nostalgia kicking in, but these menus really are just forgettable. Now where this game really shines is in all the new customization options. And thanks to being on the 7th generation hardware, it's been able to take full advantage of being updated. Every Armored Core game before 4th gen hasn't had the best of balancing, so being able to just update is a godsend, especially when it comes to multiplayer. Sadly, Armored Core 4's updates on the PS3 had issues making it to the masses. I've heard it was for legal reasons and just sheer laziness, so I'll let someone in the comments pitch in when it comes to that. There's a lot more improvements than just balancing though, so let's look at all the new paint features. There's now 12 total patterns instead of just 2, so now you can get some really cool looking shit, like a checkered pattern or some sort of scratched up type of look, or maybe a honeycomb or a digital pattern. There's a lot here in the fact that you can color and pattern each individual part. There's also a new kind of emblem creator now that uses preset objects with a few different colors, so it takes a bit less effort for someone like me that couldn't create anything worth a damn in the pixel art in the previous games. You can also slap your emblem you made on your AC. It might not sound like that big of a deal, but ironically this feature turns into one of the biggest boons to customization. The reason is you can make something like a square with the preset color, and slap it onto any area of the mech, effectively changing the mech's color. And I don't think I even need to explain why this is such a big deal. You can now spend hours or even days just customizing a mech to your heart's desire. Another customization feature is stabilizers. I mainly use them for decorative purposes, but they actually have a sort of advanced but not so necessary purpose, which is to balance out your mech. Let's say you equipped a really heavy weapon on your right side. Well, if you put stabilizers on the left side, it'll balance your mech out. Same can be said for weight in the front and back of your AC. Now where it gets advanced is if you have more weight on one side, you'll quick turn faster in that direction, but slower in the opposite. And if you put a lot of weight behind you, you'll move faster in the forward direction, but lose speed going backwards. And vice versa, depending on where your weight is. Now this isn't really a big deal, I just usually slap parts on to try and balance out my left and right weight, and try to put as much weight in the back as I can, while still looking stylish. And now that I've mentioned quick turning, let's talk about quick boosting. Quick boosting is completely separated from regular boosting, and as the name suggests, you get a quick boost of speed in the direction you're moving. If you don't input any movement directions and instead just turn your camera right or left and quick boost, you'll do a quick turn. And this really increases the amount of diversity you have when it comes to choosing your boosters, as now instead of equipping one booster, it's separated into 3 different boosters, being main boosters, side boosters, and back boosters. And with the addition of quick boosting, all these different boosters might be better or worse when it comes to boosting or quick boosting. And overboosting is now independent from the core, so you can equip whichever one you want. And there's a lot of stats behind choosing an overbooster too. I'm not going to get into too much detail, but overboosting now consumes your primal armor and your energy bar. And the big thing is the new assault armor feature that only made it into this game. In other words, 4 didn't have it. And you might just recognize this and primal armor from the Armored Core 6 trailer. But back on the topic of quick boosting, it recharges in about half a second. So with a decent setup, it can be really spammable. And instead of being used exclusively for dodging attacks, it's also used heavily for mobility. This also, combined with the fact your energy regenerates even while boosting, is mainly why these games are viewed differently. This is why you might hear the games are faster. There's one more big change to boosters, and that comes from having pressure sensitive triggers on the PS3 and 360 controllers. Every controller preset has regular boosting bound to left trigger and quick boosting bound to right trigger. Since they're pressure sensitive, you can now choose how much power you want to put into your boosters. So if you want to hover in the air or slow your fall or climb to a higher altitude faster, you can do all that. This is actually a huge deal, and none of this was possible in previous Armored Core games. And that brings us to second staging. Second staging is what separates the noobs from the pros. If you pull down the quick boost trigger at just the right time and in just the right area, you'll perform a second stage, which gives a much larger boost of speed. And this takes an insane amount of precision. If I had to compare it to anything, it would be shield dropping in Melee. And if anyone has ever tried getting into the competitive scene in Melee, they would know it takes a lot of patience and muscle memory to do it consistently. To give you an example of how hard it is, I used to play 4th gen on the 360 and I got it down pretty well. So now that I'm playing this with the PS5 controller on emulator, I tried for a few minutes and I just figured it no longer existed or didn't exist on the PS3 because the triggers weren't as well made. So yeah, just that difference of switching from a 360 to a PS5 controller was enough to throw me off enough to think it no longer existed. This is hands down a huge advantage for anyone who played the online multiplayer versus mode, and as I said, it's kind of a pressure sensitive trick, so if you don't press down with just the right pressure at just the right pace, in just the right position, you won't pull it off. For anyone trying to get it down, my only suggestion is the sweet spot is about 5/8 into the trigger press. And if you're doing it in air, you can see the flames from your quick boost have a much sharper tail, and the sound of the quick boost is a bit louder. And with that, I want to get into the multiplayer. I've put thousands of hours into this game back in the day, and most of it is contributed to the multiplayer. The PvP was kinda basic, being able to have up to 8 players doing free-for-all or a team battle. There was also a lot of blade-only matches, which was a game mode made up by the community. As simplistic as the PvP was, the replayability came from building a mech itself. Not only would a good player have to perform well on the battlefield, but they'd also have to know how to make their own mech. Which, by the way, instead of being limited to only 3 hangar slots, you can save as many designs as you want, which is also kind of a big deal. And also, you could trade AC schematics and emblems with people that were in your same lobby. It's pretty cool, and surprisingly, with how simplistic the emblem editor was, you would still see a few X-rated emblems. I really wonder how Armored Core 6 is gonna do emblems. They might just have to remove it entirely. I hope they don't though, it was a pretty cool feature. Sadly, when it comes to multiplayer though, there was one big thing that would gatekeep a lot of new players from participating in the PvP, and that's FRS memory. Optional slots have been totally removed and replaced with something called tuning. And I gotta say, I'm really glad they removed optional parts, seeing how it was the deciding factor in what core I would use in all the previous Armored Core games. And FRS memory is a good replacement. You can tune just about any stat like energy output or KP output or turning speed. The issue comes with how you acquire these FRS points. As you progress through missions in the arena, you'll get memory which you can use to tune your mech. And getting the FRS is pretty easy. That is, until you start getting into hard missions. To get all the FRS, you have to S-rank every mission in the game, including on hard mode, and I'll talk more about hard mode later, but just know this FRS memory is extremely useful. Fully maxing out energy output will get you an extra 10% energy regeneration, and that's about the same with KP output, which contributes to how fast your primal armor recharges. So yeah, these tuning points are a big deal, and sadly I've known a lot of new players I've tried to help get into multiplayer just totally give up, because getting all this FRS memory was just too much for them to care about. Now, thankfully that's not something anyone has to worry about these days, because you can just grab a 100% save file off the internet. Compliments of the Armored Core 2.0 Discord, and just a reminder I threw their link down in the description. And also the geniuses over there figured out how to get multiplayer on emulator up and running. So that's pretty awesome. I think one of these days we really have to host a multiplayer event sometime before Armored Core 6 comes out. So sadly, an element that only made it into For Answer was the online co-op. So in about a third of the missions, you can hire AC consorts as backup. There's a few NPCs you can hire in each of these missions, but you can also hire people online. To my knowledge, this is the first game to have anything like it, at least when it comes to playing online. And back in the day, I had a lot of fun helping people out when it came to beating missions or even S-ranking missions. But sadly, most of the missions like this are actually easier missions in the game. I wish all the missions were co-op, but to be honest, I'm just glad that any amount of co-op was in the game at all. So speaking about consorts, I was glad to see the amount of detail they put into them. Yeah, in previous games, MT pilots might bump up to AC pilots, and even though there's nothing like that here in For Answer, the consorts just have a lot of personality connected to them.
Ah, normal troops. I'll take care of these. Sit back, relax, and watch me fly. Over already? Calling on me to mop up a bunch of normals? Who do you think you're talking to?
Celebrity Ash, let's kick some ass!
Marygate reporting. Commencing attack. You be my shield. That's what the heavies are for. I'm launching a frontal barrage. Pinpoint targeting just isn't my style. That's it. Battle over. You and I, we work well together. Marygate here. I'm going in. You take these risky jobs too, huh? Mission complete, thanks to you.
This is Orisawa Heavy Industries. I'll take point. They won't put a scratch on Raiden. These undisciplined links have the gall to face Raiden. Orisawa Heavy Industries Raiden here. I don't know how much they told you, but you have guts taking this mission. If we can just hit the target, we won't lose. It's common sense.
This is Celebrity Ash. I usually make a point of staying away from suicide missions like this. Let's not let our nerves get the best of us. Just take it one enemy at a time, like any other mission.
An irregular. Looks like many of Kollar's necks have gone down here. The These won't be a waste of time after all. What, you done already?
Also, consorts weren't in Armored Core 4, so that's another reason why Armored Core for Answer is the better game. But back to the game changes, head functions have completely been removed. Night vision, biosensors, map functionality, and the whole entire map at that have all been removed. The missions are simple enough where you don't really need a map. I would have preferred they kept it in though, but I'm not going to spend any time complaining about it. Cores no longer have overboosting and optional slots connected to them, and I think that's for the best. With these two changes, you can use whatever core parts you want, so Fashion Core has never been easier. Sadly, Exceed Orbit cores have been removed in 4th gen. I'm not too happy, but I understand how a third source of damage and the possibility of infinite ammo might be hard to balance. Also, weapons are ambidextrous. So firstly, this means any weapons you have on your left side fire independently from the right side. And with left and right arm weapons being ambidextrous, you can just do something like slap on 2 laser blades in both hands. Or you can do the same thing with like machine guns or rifles. In previous games, your right arm weapon and all your back weapons were considered main weapons, which your offhand weapon was stuck being your only form of secondary attack, which just meant weapons with the most ammo were ideal, even making some of the weapons with less ammo unusable. But now you can fire 2 back weapons at the same time, and that might seem overpowered since back weapons were pretty good in previous games, but back weapons have been balanced to account for it. Also, Human Plus is now just a feature you have right from the start of the game, which is kind of a big change from the previous 4 games where they just flat out removed that feature. Anyone that's watched any of my previous videos probably know that I'm really happy about this change, and how they balance back weapons is through the new stability stat. If you're firing a big heavy back weapon, you're going to get staggered from the recoil, unless your core parts are heavy enough to absorb it, and I think this is just the perfect way of balancing it. And you might think now with Human Plus just coming naturally, that legs like quad legs and tank legs might be less viable, but I don't think that's the case. Quad legs have good stability and a lot of forward momentum, with the trade-off of not having the best energy conservation, and tank legs are just tank legs. You're a big heavy boy with a lot of health and unlimited weight to put on your mech, so yeah, if you want to do that, you can. Sadly, hover legs have been removed from this game. The reason being all legs can float on water now, and the game takes full advantage of this with some of the coolest water levels that I've ever seen in any Armored Core game. The lock-on system has gone through a big change, and I think it's great. No longer is there a big square dictating your lockbox. It clears up the screen, and stats like arm maneuverability and weapon melee ability determine how wide and tall your lockbox is. And when you can shoot, things turn red, so it's simple and sweet. Also, there's damage numbers and indicators that show how much primal armor your opponent has, and how much damage you're doing per shot. So I really do think not only is the HUD more minimalistic, but it's also more informative. And by holding down the left stick, you can switch to manual aim mode, which I found useful for destroying things like boats and submarines and other objects. There's also a lot more destructible objects, and I think it's a good amount of destruction for a game on the 7th generation of consoles. The very first mission in this game, you can just destroy the ground under the MTs and watch them sink into the water. With how much budget they're putting into Armored Core 6, I'm really looking forward to seeing the destruction in that game. Moving on, mechs as fast as they are really do feel like they have a lot of weight behind them. If you quick boost into a wall, you'll get staggered a bit from the impact. Also, it's cool seeing all the bullets hit your primal armor, and it's also cool that the more damage you take, you can see your shield diminish more and more. Or when you're going high speed in a Vanguard overboost, you can see the primal armor from the air hitting it. Also, something small is there's an actual reload animation for things like machine guns and rifles. In the last few games, you had to reload, but they didn't really have an animation to it. And I just gotta say they did an excellent job visually expressing all this stuff. Definitely a jump up from the old PS2 games. One big thing that separates 4th gen apart from the rest is the hard missions. Previous games had a hard mode you could toggle on at the start, but funny enough, all it did was lower the size of your lockbox. which I have to say is hands down the laziest way to implement a hard mode. I don't like difficulty sliders in games, but lowering your lock size is even worse than doing something like changing health size and damage ratings. But hard mode isn't just a setting. Hard mode in 4th gen is only accessible after beating your first playthrough of the game, and as long as you've done the normal mode mission, you can get into the hard mission. The hard factor isn't just enemies being tougher, or any of the generic shit you would see in any other game. Yes, some missions you might have more enemies, but a lot of the hard missions, you'll see something unexpected like an AC showing up.
Confirmed. Silent Avalanche has been destroyed. Mission complete. No, wait. I'm picking up enemy reinforcements. A pair of nexts.
We're heading up, and you're our stepping stone. It's a dog-eat-dog world.
Or maybe your Vanguard overboost has issues and you're forced to eject, having to make it to a giant arms fort miles away in the ocean.
VOP malfunction detected. It's about to explode. Initiating emergency purge. Prepare for combat. Those interior bastards. What are we, guinea pigs? You'll have to close in on Gigabase using standard boost. What a joke of an operation.
Or maybe the backup you were supposed to get never arrives and you just have to finish the job yourself.
This is GA's Arms Fort Unit. We're en route to your position. Give us a little time.
The cavalry, huh? Looks like they knew about the situation. They just left us in the dark. You hear that? They're coming to reinforce us. Hang in there.
We've run into trouble. Our arms fort is suddenly halted. We can't provide support. You're on your own. You're the one getting paid the big bucks, right? Take care of the situation.
Trouble? What the hell are you talking about? You got some nerve, don't you? We'll have a little chat after this mission's over.
All in all, hard missions add a lot of value to the game, and this is one of the coolest ways a hard mode has been implemented in any game, so yeah, credit where it's due. So that covers all the big changes, but there's also a lot of small ones I should talk about. The mailbox from previous games is now gone, and that makes me really sad. In the last PS2 game, Last Raven, there was information you could look up on just about anything in the game, and sadly that amazing resource is just not here in this game. It really feels like a step in the wrong direction, but moving on, energy weapons now cost a bit of money to fire, and since ammo factors into your ranking, I have to say it's a good change. And instead of missile interception extensions, they've turned them into flares, which are pretty cool. They linger around in the air, and they're a lot more reliable. Cores also no longer have anti-missile systems built in, so yeah, flares are a pretty good option. Also, something that's pretty cool is you can just shoot down enemy missiles, and it's especially useful if you shoot them down while they're coming out of your enemy. It's a quick and easy way to do a lot of damage to them. And lastly, something that they scrapped from Armored Core 4 was the inspector camera that they had. You can click the right stick down when you're locked onto something and it'll show a little box of whatever you were locked onto. One mission in particular had this camera pointed behind you so you could see where you were going while fighting this giant MT in the tunnel. And yeah, there's the next evolution of the giant MT in the tunnel. It's a really good upgrade from the previous MTs in the tunnel. That covers all the changes to my knowledge, so I want to take the time to show off some gameplay. In previous Armored Core games, ACs were nowhere near as capable as these new Nexts, and the game works with that, giving you some of the most amazing missions like Spirit of Motherwill here. I think this is one of the best missions in all of Armored Core, so I'm just going to let it play out.
I'll tell you about your mission. The client is Omer Science Technology. The target is BFF Corporation's main arms fort, Spirit of Motherwill. The enemy AF is armed with large-bore, long-range ordnance. It's an oversized, out-of-date machine, but the long-range punch it can deliver still makes it a serious threat. To counter this, the client has proposed you use a Vanguard overboost unit to approach your target. Its tremendous speed should allow you to close on the target's perimeter without getting hit. Once you've closed in, target the gun batteries. Destroying those guns should also cause damage to the machine's interior. It's pretty poorly designed, but that kind of sloppy work is expected of them. That's the briefing. This is a very important mission for Omer Science Technology. We hope you come through for us.
Commence mission. Destroy the BFF arms fort, Spirit of Motherwill. First, the VOB will let you quickly close in on the target. This is real high-speed combat. You'll need 100% focus. VOB nearly depleted. Prepare for normal battle maneuvers. VOB depleted. Purging. Those cannons will rip you to shreds. Focus on evading their fire. Good. You're in. Remember the briefing. Take out those cannons. If our intel is right, that should take it out in one fell swoop.
Fire at Block 5!
You're making good progress. In any case, the mission plan is all we've got.
Fire at Block 8! Block 4 is on fire now! The main shaft is taking damage! We can't control it!
It looks like it's working. This is your chance. Take it down.
Main shaft is overheating! Temperatures are out of control! It's no good! It won't hold! All hands! Prepare for ground evacuation! All hands! Abandon vessel! Get out! Motherwell's breaking apart!
Confirmed. Motherwill has fallen. Mission complete. Now you can really call yourself an elite mercenary.
The game also has you taking flight thousands of feet in the sky. And you'll even be dropped off somewhere in the middle of the ocean with no land in sight. It's areas like this that really make me feel like this game is truly next generation. So that's it for gameplay, so let's get into the story. And for that, we have to start in Armored Core 4 with the discovery of Kojima particles. These particles were used for energy, but also paved the way for the next generation of armored cores named Nexts. From the power of Kojima particles, these Next easily surpass the older models, with the power to not only quick boost, but also entrap Kojima particles around the AC, making a sort of energy shield. This technology was kept as secret as possible by the corporations, and when the time came where governments could no longer feed the people, those people rebelled, and the companies were more than happy to help take over. This was called the National Dismantlement War. With the help of Next technology being exclusive to corporations, they inevitably won the war. Unfortunately, the average Joe didn't really profit from their new corporate overlords, and even though governments no longer exist, that didn't stop a new war from popping up. This time, it was company versus company. with some quote-unquote terrorist organizations thrown into the mix. This war is the Lynx War, and that's the war we will be participating in. If you're wondering why it was called the Lynx War, it's probably because the pilot of Nex are referred to as Lynx. Anyways, we the player are belonging to Anatolia, which was a once powerful but small colony, thanks to a professor by the name Jarnefelt. This man was one of the brightest when it came to the development of Nex and Nex technology. In particular, his invention, the Allegorical Manipulation System, or AMS for short. AMS is the process of pilots' nerves literally being wired into their necks. This results in a much greater control of the next, but just like midichlorians in Star Wars, not every person is compatible with this technology, and the performance from person to person varied. A pilot with a high AMS compatibility would find themselves higher on the leaderboards, and if you were on the opposite end of the spectrum, well, let's just say you wouldn't be there mentally, or at worst you would die. So Professor Jarnefeld made Anatolia a very wealthy nation, but unfortunately he would pass away. This would over time make for the collapsing of Anatolia, but there is one beacon of hope. One Lynx with one Next will become a mercenary for hire to possibly once again put Anatolia on the map. And with the help of Professor Jarnefeld's daughter Fiona, the player will participate in the Lynx War, defeating not only other pilots, but putting down companies themselves. This puts a huge target on Anatolia, and the game ends with the player character in Anatolia defending it from one of the best Lynx in the game named Joshua O'Brien.
Hey. I guess there's little need for words. So, this is the end. This is for the best.
And a little backstory behind Josh, he really didn't do this on his own accord and was blackmailed into getting the job. He accepted it to protect his own people.
Hey, can you hear me? Thank you.
After winning the battle, Anatolia's mercenary and Fiona run off into the sunset together, far away from Anatolia, eventually being seen later on in For Answer. Now, it is possible for me to go more in depth with the story, but a content creator by the name of Armored Core Lore has already done that, going into excruciating detail explaining the story, not just from the game itself, but books he personally translated to English. So if you want to get into the nitty-gritty, I'd suggest watching his videos, or even possibly playing the game for yourself. And that brings us 10 years into the future with Armored Core For Answer, where half of humanity has fled the surface from not only standard pollution, but Kojima particles themselves, seeing how these Kojima particles are the most toxic substance on Earth. So half of humanity lives on the sky in these huge airships called cradles, and they're mostly powered by Arterias, which are huge guns mounted on the surface of Earth firing microwaves at the cradles to keep them airborne. And I'm sure you could guess powering an airship holding hundreds of millions of humans takes a lot of resources, and thus creates even more waste. The League is responsible for this plan, and the League is pretty much most of the corporation combined into a single entity. This doesn't, however, stop them from warring with each other on the surface, but this does ensure the general safety of the cradles themselves. Not everyone was on board with the League's plan though, namely Linark, which is a city that strives for freedom, and Orca, which is made up of a group of 12 necks which have a secret agenda named the Closed Plan, and we'll talk more on that plan later. We start the game as a Green Pea Nex pilot thrown into this dystopian world. We accept missions and arena fights from Collard, which is just an intermediary between pilots and the League. The missions we get are not too difficult and do a good job easing us into the game, while earning enough money to buy more parts for our AC. But as things start to heat up between the different factions, we're tunneled down 3 separate paths. There's the League path, the Orca path, and for now we'll just call it the Old King path. Your first playthrough you can only do the League path, so let's cover that. It starts just like any of the other playthroughs, where we have to kill this thing, escort those things, and then kill that really big thing. This brings us to the point where we're requested to take out Linark's only Lynx, whose name in the game is unknown, and he pilots a Nex made exclusively for him named White Glint. Now this guy isn't just unknown, he's actually the player character from the previous game. And confusingly, the name White Glint was the name of the AC belonging to the final boss of the last game, Joshua O'Brien. The reason the Nex was named White Glint could be because the same guy who made Joshua's Next is the same guy who made this Next. So maybe the guy just likes using the same name for his best of best mechs he creates. Or it could just be Anatolia's mercenary commemorating a man he once considered a friend, who was eventually blackmailed into becoming an enemy. But the true reason, nobody really knows. Anyways, we weren't trusted to defeat White Glint alone, and have been accompanied by the rank 1 League pilot Odstarva. But he inevitably goes for a swim. And after defeating White Glint, 2 of the best pilots no longer exist, and only we remain. This leaves Linark in a bad position, but our adventure continues into Chapter 3, where we eventually receive a mission from one of the League corporations to defend the Arteria Carpals from Orca. If you don't remember, Arterias are those huge microwave guns that power the cradles. This ends successfully, and through the course of the next missions, we'll be taking on Orca. And we do that pretty successfully. But sadly, as successful as we are, it seems to have been to no avail. This turns into corporate elites in the League seemingly to disengage from the war with Orca overnight, and now only 2 pilots have decided to continue the fight. Those 2 pilots being Windy Fanchon and us, leading to the final mission to stop Orca at the most important Arteria, the Cranium.
The Cranium's core is just up ahead. I am in your debt. Thank you.
I didn't realize you would sacrifice so much. We could use more soldiers like you.
You two. I guess you aren't content to rot with the rest of them. Unbearable.
Enemy Nex destroyed. 1 more to go.
My fate? To lose everything. Prepare your soul. These cowardly ideals, they will cause the downfall of humanity.
Humanity? I don't see humanity anywhere on Starva.
And mankind would be safe to dream, floating among the clouds. Is that your answer? So be it.
Maltzel fell at Big Box, and Maximilian Thermidor at Cranium. In an instant, the backbone of Orca was broken. The the League rewarded their Lynx saviors with glowing eulogies. They hunted down the remnants of Orca and once again secured the dignity of their rule. We have at long last restored peace to our world, they proclaimed. The cradles continued to float serenely above the planet. Within them, people soon forgot the terrible danger that had threatened their existence.
Playthrough 2 will see us joining the side of Orca. We can choose to help White Glint defend Lineark this time, but it ends up the same way. White Glint still goes down and Odstarvis still goes down. The playthrough diverts when we're given a mission to attack Arteria Carpals instead of defend it, which we do successfully. We then get a mission to defend some anti-satellite cannons. So at this point, we should probably talk about the closed plan that Orca's fighting for. The objective of the closed plan is to redirect the energy powering the cradles to be used in the anti-satellite cannons to shoot down these things called assault cells, which have pretty much made it impossible to leave Earth. These assault cells were put in place by all the different corporations, so no single corporation could take advantage of space. It's kind of weird that in this universe there's giant robots but no space, and in reality it's the exact opposite with no giant robots with a whole lot of space. But anyways, with this redirection of power, the cradles would no longer have the energy to stay in the air, and would have to glide back down to Earth. Protecting these cannons and getting them powered up is our ticket to space. Our next mission is to take out the Answerer, which is just another really cool mission in this game's huge list of really cool missions. Unfortunately, once again, as successful as we've been, our comrades have been completely dropping the ball, which brings us to the final mission that has us attacking the Cranium.
Links of Collard. Thermidor here. If you are listening to this message, then I am already dead. Most likely at the Arteria Cranium. Maltzel will not return alive from Big Box. That leaves you as the sole surviving member of Orca. I'm asking you to do this in my stead. Take the Cranium. If you succeed, the Cradle's last support will be gone, and mankind will be forced to return to the surface. Then the anti-satellite batteries can use the energy from the cradles to eliminate the assault cells and clear our path to space. It is all up to you now. Do this for your fellow Orca warriors and for all humanity.
Target the two nexts, Ryder Palash and Myblis.
Our guests have arrived, Wendy. Right on schedule.
You don't hesitate to kill for humanity, do you? Then lay down your own life, like Thermidor before you.
AP down 40%.
Not the smoothest ending to my career. Wendy, I'm sorry. I wasn't much help.
Roy Salond, a good guy? It doesn't suit you.
Myblis has been destroyed. Ryder Palash has been destroyed. So ends Phase 1 of the closed plan. You are the sole remaining Orca member.
To treasure a life, is that something to laugh at? Everything is twisted. You, this world, all of it.
Orca took control of Cranium. Without the energy needed to support them, the cradles fell to Earth. In the devastation and poisoned air of the planet's surface, infants coughed feebly in the arms of their despairing mothers, while the anti-satellite batteries continued their steady charge. When their power is finally unleashed, the web of assault cells over the planet will be destroyed, the sins of the corporations purged. Even as humanity is decimated, they will discover a new frontier, outer space. A new direction at last. It will be a time of growth, of ambition, and of war.
The third ending is pretty interesting. It starts after joining Orca by destroying the Arteria Carpals. And afterwards, instead of following Orca's plans, we decide to help this guy, Old King, who has a more nefarious plot.
Greetings, lapdog. This is Old King. We're going to destroy Cradle 03. Care to join us? Orca has been too lenient for too long. In a revolution, blood must be spilled. Don't you think?
Good, you came. How obedient of you. Fell the cradles, all of them. Millions will die. Exciting, don't you think?
Just know how to kill, huh? Nothing else? That's too bad. It's time for you and I to go our separate ways.
One down, 20 million dead. $40 million. $60 million. $80 million. $100 million. Done. There are still so many more lives to take. Our journey is just beginning.
Now, going down the Orca path still has humanity surviving. The cradles, in case of running out of energy, could just glide back down to the Earth. But in this playthrough, we just decide to say fuck it and wipe out all of humanity. This leads into the final mission.
Here is the mission. The objective is to take control of the large-scale Arteria facility, Carpals. This time, the details of the operation are up to you. You are to simply take out anyone or anything that gets in your way. Briefing over. The Union seeks only to secure the future safety of humanity and the planet. This mission is an essential step in realizing that goal. We trust that you will meet with 100% success.
Lapdog.
Please accept my apologies. That briefing you saw was manufactured. This is the end of the road for you. I think you understand why.
Well, it is what it is. Your actions were clearly deliberate. There's no point in trying to reason with you.
Maybe it's just an animal. Can it even understand what we're saying?
You think you're some kind of one-man army? You think it's your right to choose who lives and dies?
You killed too many.
Soon after, the blood of the innocents would rain down from the cradles, all at the hands of a single lynx. One who will be the greatest monster mankind has ever seen. taking more lives than any other in history.
Now, I think it was pretty obvious to everyone that this mission was nothing more than a trap to have the player character and Old King killed. And man, this mission in hard mode throws not just 4 next at you, but 5. The 5th next actually being the lady that organizes missions for you. And by the way, her name's Samika, which might be a reference to Project Phantasma. But yeah, if you beat this mission on hard, I just hope you get an S rank. That's all I gotta say. It's really tough. So to conclude, Armored Core for Answer is one of my favorites. The story is Armored Core at its base, with all the corporations warring with each other, but also adds a lot more to the story, with half of humanity living in the sky and assault satellites, blocking the way to space. The gameplay was definitely next gen for Armored Core, and with all the updates that came out, it made for a damn good competitive multiplayer. If you haven't played any of the Armored Core games, I'd highly suggest you at least try this one out. I'm sure by now you guys all know this game is 100% playable on emulator, and I've pointed you in the right direction if you need any help. And there's a lot more to the stories of both Armored Core 4 and For Answer that I failed to mention, and there's even still some really cool fights I failed to cover, which hopefully you'll just experience those out for yourself. But anyways, if you want to support the channel, just simply leave a like and comment. If you don't have anything to say, just comment the number 1 or something and I'll be extremely thankful. And that was Armored Core for Answer. I'm not sure what comes next, but there will eventually be a 5th gen video, and I'll probably live stream it, so stay tuned for that. I'll see you guys all in the next one.